Hi, I'm joined by Garth DeAngelis from Firaxis Games today to talk about XCOM 2. You're showing off a new demo for Gamescom at the moment, and should we start there on what exactly it is that you're showing?
Yeah, absolutely. So at E3 we showed off a lot of new tactical stuff.
Right.
Talked all about procedural maps, new aliens, new abilities, new classes. Here we are focusing on the strategy game, which is, as you know, the other half of what makes XCOM.
So what we would usually call like base building from the first one, but I guess it's a bit different this time around, isn't it? Because the base is slightly more mobile.
Yeah, the base is above ground, and so there's a lot of changes to the subsystems. We still have a lot of the anchors in place, but what we wanted to do with strategy, and it sort of dovetails nicely with the procedural maps on tactical. Overall, we want the world to feel more unpredictable.
Right.
We want things to be a little more unwieldy. This is now an alien-occupied Earth.
Sure.
You're now more proactive since you're trying to take Earth back rather than just being reactive and hitting the scan button waiting for missions to come to you. You now have to move the Avenger around. It is a mobile base, and decide where you want to find the resistance cells to start liberating the world and taking it back. So, to your question, base building, there's some familiar, there's a lot that's changed as well. You'll see, when you see the demo, the Avenger acts almost as your new ant farm, and you still have those anchors of research engineering, the bridge, which has the hollow globe. And then the guts of the ship, since it's an old alien vessel, you'll see all these like alien components and bits that you can clear out with engineers, and they can clear them out, and then you can make choices of what do I want to build in this spot. So it's somewhat similar to excavation. Some of the changes that we made, though, are staffing now plays into that. Staffing plays a much bigger role. It's not more of an abstract number that just acts as a mathematic addition to how fast you can do things.
Right, okay.
You now get specific VIPs and specific staff that have names, they have faces, and you say, I want you to go work here and do this.
Right.
So you can assign them to clear out that alien debris.
So I guess in Enemy Unknown, there were some of the council missions kind of hinted towards that when you would go to rescue a named scientist.
That's right.
Is that going to be the same thing, but it's for you this time?
That's right. That's right. Okay. It'll have a similar setup to that, but now you get to actually bring that resource back and then put them to work specifically as the commander.
I like that you just called it a resource. That's great. Very XCOM.
This is true. Right.
Right. Cool. And in terms of the building itself, you said just that you kind of after a little bit more unpredictability there.
Yes.
Like in the original XCOM Enemy Unknown, there was something of a build order. Obviously, depending on where the Steam vents were, it might change that, but there was a build order you could go for. Is that different this time around?
Yeah, we do have some of that interplay there when you'll have to learn the details of the alien debris that's left behind.
Okay.
They have very different facets to them. You might have a power coil, you might have something that's unearthed beneath one that makes sense to put a power relay there. There's some play there, but it's a little more open-ended with how you want to build things, and it's not as cut and dry with the order that you're going to go in. The facilities themselves also have a lot more depth and flexibility within them. Something that we're showing off in the demo is called the Proving Grounds. You can kind of think it analogous to your Foundry from Enemy Unknown, but now it's a little bit more of awesome item and weapon roulette, where you're pulling the slot machine, you're putting it to work, you're saying, I want you to research experimental ammo, or experimental grenades, or experimental armor, and you don't know what you're going to get. It's going to be something awesome, but you don't quite know what you're going to get. It could be a flamethrower, it could be a shredder cannon, it could be a rocket launcher, and then you could put that to use on your soldiers. And that incentivizes you to go back and keep experimenting with that to see what you're going to get. So things like that, and then if you assign a staff there, they can do it faster. So you can pull those slots faster and maximize the amount of time that you get out of that room.
When you're talking about that roulette, is that like a pool of items and resources rather than kind of the game generating them?
That's right.
Right. Okay.
That's right. You got it.
I was going to ask, obviously this changes how you got to think about balance in quite a big way, because I guess you can't predict exactly where the players will be up to tech-wise.
That's right.
In different missions.
Balance is a huge discussion with the team. And certainly when you say, hey, we want to pull back the reins a little bit, we want this to feel more open-ended, you have to be conscientious that it's not pulled back so much that those boundaries of too difficult or unwieldy and too easy, you always stay within those boundaries. We want it to be more open-ended, but we also want you to always have a counterplay to something that gets thrown at you.
Sure.
When you look at something, you're going to learn about alien dark events.
Right.
Now the aliens have their own game that they're playing, where you can almost think about it like they have their own research tree that's hidden to you, but they have things that they will do that are different every single game as well. So they might deploy a UFO if you're getting a little too confident with your flight, that will hunt you down and try to shoot down the Avenger.
Right.
That doesn't happen every playthrough. It might, but if you don't mitigate it, then there's a greater chance that it'll come after you. They might beef up the advent padding of the troopers on the ground. So then when you play them in tactical, their HP is through the roof.
Sure.
Or they now have venom rounds that they're shooting at you. So there's sort of these tactical strategy modifiers that change every single time you play. And you can mitigate one of them, but you can't mitigate all of them at any given time.
So how do you go about mitigating that stuff? Like, how do you said the research tree is hidden from you.
Yeah.
What kind of things are you doing? Is it successful missions?
Yes.
Kind of knock them back? Or?
It is. So you'll get a sense of what's coming around the bend. It's almost similar to the council spokesman's monthly report in Enemy Unknown,
right,
where it'll tell you, oh, we have some intel on what the aliens are working towards. And you might not have all the information. It might say this is a hidden project they're working towards, and if you want to spend intel to see it, you can. But it'll say this is what's coming around the bend. Start worrying. How are you going to address this? And then when you get your missions, which we're calling Guerilla Ops, you'll have multiple missions that you can select, and then the one that you choose will say this will counter Dark Event A, or this one will counter the Dark Event that gives them venom rounds. And so then you can weigh, okay, I'm going to stop this project. If I complete this objective on the tactical map, then it'll stop them from progressing towards this Dark Event. But the other one will go through at some point if I don't address it on the next go round.
Right. In terms of picking those missions as well, obviously you just mentioned that it will counter these alien events, and you mentioned also the kind of the named scientists or resources that you might want to pick
resources,
up. So are those the main kind of reasons that you'll pick between different missions?
Yeah, so you'll get a reward. It could be a human resource, it could be supplies, it could be intel, which is a new resource in XCOM, which helps you expand regions or do certain things like rush techs if you find the black market.
Can you expand on some of that? Because this sounds all very new.
Sure. There's a lot new there.
Yeah.
So you can. There's a little bit of territory control going on on the Geoscape now. Since you do have to be proactive and you have a mobile base now, there is actually intent and purpose and a little bit of exploration and expansion of the world based on where you choose to place the Avenger at any given time.
Okay.
So you'll start randomly in a region, and that's where your resistance headquarters are rooted. But when you move the Avenger, you may say, okay, I'm starting in Egypt, I want to go to Western Africa, or do I want to go to Europe? If you choose Western Africa because you're within proximity of there, you can then make contact and galvanize the resistance in that region. And that will then play in the metagame, which we haven't even gotten to as well.
Right.
But the aliens have a long-term goal, right?
Got you. Yeah.
They have a long-term goal. There's a lot to talk about here.
Yeah.
But you're a hardcore player, so I'm hoping it's sinking all in.
This sounds good. I'm glad that the person before me was late for their interview. This is good.
But region expansion really helps with that long-term game. The aliens are generating facilities that you have to take out, or else you're going to lose the game, because that's contributing to this narrative project that you'll learn about when you play the game. You can do that, and you can maximize region expansion if you want to do that fast, but then you're forgoing things like searching for the black market, which will, if you find it, it'll allow you to rush techs. It will allow you to trade supplies and sell things like the gray market.
It's not just XCOM that are kind of rebelling against the aliens, and I guess the black market is a separate entity.
There's a resistance movement that's happening as well. XCOM is getting rebuilt, but the XCOM is inspiring people beyond themselves as well. Part of that's the black market. Part of that is just the general resistance that can help you find other mission types, like supply raids. We haven't talked about yet.
Yep,
so
this is good.
It's very cool stuff that it all plays together in a very, very interesting way. And you can imagine the Geoscape just feels so much more alive, so much more dynamic than Enemy Unknown.
In terms of progress for the player, now in Enemy Unknown, obviously, you started off with the full support of the council. In this game, is it more the case that you're starting with very little and trying to gain the support of this resistance movement?
You got it. A lot of things have the switch has been flipped. A lot of things are. It's a very cool dichotomy from Enemy Unknown, both in tactical and strategy, where you were being invaded, and in some ways you're now the invader. You're taking back. You have no support, and that's why you have to be more proactive rather than reactive, because you have to earn that support. It's exactly what you said. So you don't have sort of this list of countries and their full support. Now you have to. Things are sort of hidden to you with respect to what the aliens are doing, and you have to uncover that, and you'll eventually learn how quickly what the pressure is before you lose the world again. as you're building the resistance.
So what is your end goal as the player? Like
that I cannot talk about. But there is an end goal. You'll learn about that in the story. I don't want to give too many spoilers right now, but that ties directly into the mechanics of the game.
And the aliens themselves also have their own kind of, like I said, this meta game that's going on.
Yes, that's so driven.
Is that more of a race then? You're trying to win before they do? Or,
yeah. There's a bit of a race going on. It's also just a bit of mitigation, slowing them down, so you can still go along your proactive goals of going down the research tree at the pace that you want to go down, completing the narrative missions that also tie in to that alien high-level goal. There's a lot there to juggle, which is very cool, and it feels very different every time you play.
Sure, cool. We've only just kind of touched upon the black market stuff. So, how does that work? Once you do manage to gain access to it, is that something that happens in every game, by the way? Is that?
Yeah. You'll find the black market. There's variation as to when you find it, depending on where you're at in the world and how you're doing resource-wise. But when you do find it, it first and foremost acts as that awesome trading depot, similar to the gray market, where you want to get rid of some things, and it's a
alien heads and
and it's a nice way to supplement supplies if you need them. But it does some other cool things, like I mentioned, rushing research, rushing technologies if you want to, which is a nice counterplay because the game is so open-ended. It's a really good example that design came up with to say if the player gets behind the 8 ball here, once they find the black market, if they want to spend some intel, they'll be able to rush this particular research if they want to catch up. So things like that are in place.
And intel would have been like a direct reward from a mission.
It can be a direct reward from a mission. You may find it at a rumor site. So rumor sites are a new thing as well. Okay. And again, you can't do both things at once. If you are liberating a region or taking a mission, one of the other sites you can go to, they're called rumors. And you could get supplies from them, you could get intel, you might get alloys or Illyrium. And if you go there, that's another way to compensate and get intel, but then you're not expanding your resistance movement while you're doing that.
Yeah, it sounds like there is an awful lot going on here. Like,
there is.
How similarly does it play to Enemy Unknown and to a lesser extent within, I guess?
It's really interesting, and no one's asked me that question yet, but just thinking through my experiences, I'm very, very excited with what the team is doing and how design is shaking out with it, because there's so much different, as I'm telling you, but there is still this nice rooted feel of XCOM, the DNA of XCOM. It's just the reins are now pulled back a little bit, so you have a little bit more freedom, actually a lot more freedom on the strategy layer, but you still have that home. You have your base, you have your research and engineering that you're doing. And you have that Geoscape, which looks familiar on the surface. There's just a lot more to do. So it has this nice sense of familiarity, but when you dig into it, when you dig into the details, you're like, wow, this gives so much more flexibility to play that I think it'll encourage a lot more replays.
Something that was kind of interesting, just in terms of the progression of the game so far. Obviously, in Enemy Unknown, I think players could probably get away with moving cautiously, kind of move Overwatch a little bit more. Enemy Within brought in its own counter to that with the meld system, but it was building upon Enemy Unknown. Like this time around, you kind of been able to start from scratch again, I guess. And you're looking at things like reinforcements, right? To kind of counter that.
We are. There are things like reinforcements which can happen dynamically. You don't exactly know when they're going to come in. There are things like, so we still have loot. There's tangible loot you can pick up on the map, and there is a timer to that. The Advent have set that to self-destruct if you're not going to get there in time, because they don't want a civilian uprising. So you have to make a decision sometimes of, I want that weapon attachment, so I can put that on my trusty sniper rifle back at base. I'm going to make a risk and go and get that before it explodes. And that doesn't happen that often, so you have to make that decision. You also have the resistance objective, which can be, hacking the workstation or protecting the resistance device or destroying the alien uplink. And a lot of those have timers on them, so you cannot just sit back and wait for the enemy. You always have to weigh, I want to move forward because I'm losing time on my resistance objective versus staying back and playing cautiously. So you can still do that, and we're okay with move Overwatch. That's a good overall tactic.
Of course,
We just don't want that to be like the only thing you can do. So it's an awesome mix of, all right, I'm going to move Overwatch, but I also have to move half of my squad because we got to start pushing towards this objective.
Sure. Are there any other kind of key points like that from Enemy Unknown that you've kind of you've seen how players have used certain systems and you just wanted to change it this time around, or?
We're pretty happy with how tactical overall panned out. We're really happy with the system, with the cover system, with the differences in cover, and the abilities and alien ability interplay. But there are so many new abilities to play with, and the alien abilities are way more dynamic now. Like, they do crazy things that they did not do in Enemy Unknown. Sure. So we really wanted to push those things further. That's the area that we wanted to push. There's way more alien abilities relative to EU's tactical.
I guess one of the other kind of examples would be like your increased support for modding this time around. So obviously, there have been mods for Enemy Unknown. This is you giving the tools and making sure that
this is us saying, you know what, we should have done this on Enemy Unknown, and we want to give the community more tools to make things like the Long War or whatever you want to do. If you want to do a visual overhaul, we want to see more of that. We think it's the ultimate relationship with our fans and our community, and we can't wait to see what they come up with.
Awesome, me neither. Well, thank you very much, Guff.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate all your playtime as well.
Cheers. Awesome. Thanks a lot, dude.
Yeah.
There's a brilliant quote from the lead designer of XCOM Enemy Unknown, in which he describes his own game as basically a 20-hour tutorial for the Long War mod. There's no way I'm going to be able to give you a better recommendation than that one right there, but maybe I can help explain what this mod is actually all about.